Leona's hands shook as she pushed through the glass door of the 24-hour laundromat, two overstuffed bags dragging against the wet pavement behind her. The fluorescent lights hit her face. Eyes hollowed from 72 hours of back-to-back shifts, makeup smudged into dark crescents, hair plastered to her forehead from the rain she'd walked through, because the bus fare could buy dinner instead. Mrs. Kim looked up from behind the counter. Leona smiled. Wide. Bright. The smile she'd perfected over 28 years of, "I'm fine, really, and no, I don't need help." The smile that said, "Everything's under control." Even when her bank account showed $14,001 in rent was due in 3 days. "Good evening, Mrs. Kim. How are you tonight?" Her voice climbed half an octave too high, that customer service pitch she couldn't turn off anymore. Mrs. Kim nodded slowly, eyes lingering a second too long on Leona's face. In the corner, a man folded warehouse uniforms with mechanical precision. Baek Sun-woo. Leona had seen him here 5, maybe 6 times over the past month. Always late, always alone, always silent. He looked up as she passed, but she didn't meet his eyes. Couldn't. If someone looked too close right now, she might shatter. She fumbled in her jacket pocket for coins. 3 501 pieces. Enough for 1 load. Had to be. She fed them into machine 4, the one that usually worked. The one she always used because at least something in her life should be predictable. The machine swallowed the coins with a metallic click. Nothing. No hum. No water filling the drum. Just silence. Leona stared at the blank display. Then she laughed. A sound that came out too sharp, too loud, echoing off the tile walls. Of course this happens tonight. She hit the machine with her palm. Once. Twice. The 3rd time hard enough that pain shot through her wrist. Still nothing. The smile cracked. Just for a second. Her shoulders caved forward and she sank onto the plastic bench, bags spilling open beside her. Work uniforms she needed clean for tomorrow's catering shift, the certificate program interview, the evening event that might get her enough to stop the landlord's calls. Her hands covered her face. She couldn't cry. Not here. Not in public. Not when she'd already texted Jasmine that she was doing great, and told her mother over voicemail that Seoul is amazing, everything's going exactly as planned. But the weight pressed down. The jobs, the rent, the certificate program she couldn't afford but desperately needed, the constant performance of fine when she was drowning. Footsteps approached. Soft. Deliberate. Leona looked up. Baek stood beside machine 5, coins already in his hand. He didn't look at her directly, just fed his coins into the machine next to the broken one, then stepped back. "Machine 4 broke last week," he said quietly. His voice was low, roughened by warehouse dust and too many silent hours. "Mrs. Kim hasn't fixed it yet." "Oh." Leona wiped her face quickly, reconstructing the smile. "Thank you. You don't need to smile here." The words hung in the air between them. Leona froze. Her mouth still held the shape of that automatic defensive brightness. But his eyes, dark, steady, carrying their own exhaustion, saw straight through it. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. Not in all the years of stay positive and fake it till you make it and never let them see you struggle. He turned back to his laundry, pulling a faded jacket from his bag. "The machines don't care. Mrs. Kim doesn't care. I don't care." A pause. "You can just be." Leona's throat closed. For the first time in months, maybe years, someone had given her permission to stop performing. She realized she was still staring at him when he glanced back, expression unchanged. Not pity, not judgment, just recognition, like he'd been exactly where she was, like he knew what it cost to hold everything together when the seams were already ripping. If you've ever hidden your pain behind a smile because showing weakness felt like failure, you're not alone. subscribe, and stay with us. We're building a space for real stories, the ones that don't get told enough. Leona moved to machine 5, her hands still trembling slightly as she transferred her clothes. Bak had already started his load and returned to folding. A rhythm so practiced it looked meditative. She wanted to thank him, wanted to ask how he knew. But her voice felt tangled somewhere between her chest and her throat, so she just loaded detergent and pressed start, watching the drum begin its rotation. The laundromat hummed around them. An elderly man dozed in the corner chair. A university student typed frantically on a laptop balanced on a wobbling table. And Leona sat on the bench, staring at her machine like it held answers to questions she didn't know how to ask. First time the mask slipped? Beck's voice startled her. She turned. He wasn't looking at her, still folding a gray work shirt with precise creases. "I don't know what you mean," she said automatically. "Yes, you do." He set the shirt down, reached for another. "I've seen you here 6 times. Every time, same smile, same, 'I'm fine,' same everything." Now he did look at her. "Tonight you forgot, just for a second." Leona's fingers twisted in her lap. "I had a long day. Long month, maybe. Long year." He moved to sit on the bench opposite hers, keeping distance but not indifference. "You work 3 jobs? How did you—" "Different uniforms, different schedules. You're here at random times because your shifts don't line up." He shrugged. "I notice things when there's nothing else to do." She should have felt exposed. Instead, something in her chest loosened. Just slightly. 4 jobs, actually, she admitted. Catering, event staffing, tutoring English online. "And I'm trying to finish a certificate in administrative management." The words spilled out before she could stop them. "The test is in 3 weeks, and I haven't studied because every time I sit down I fall asleep and—" She cut herself off. Why was she telling this to a stranger? But Beck just nodded. "Sounds familiar. You work multiple jobs?" "1, 10-hour warehouse shifts. But I took care of my grandmother for 2 years before she died. Alzheimer's." His voice stayed level, factual. "Toward the end, I was sleeping maybe 3 hours a night. Still had to go to work. Still had to smile at the boss like everything was manageable." Leona stared at him. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 5 years ago." He stood, checked his machine. Still spinning. "I'm just saying, I know what it looks like when someone's drowning. And I know what it costs to keep pretending you're swimming." The machine behind Leona beeped. Wash cycle complete. She didn't move. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "With the coins. You didn't have to." Beck was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Because no one helped me. And I remember how that felt." Over the following week, Leona found herself timing her laundry to the late-night hours when the laundromat was mostly empty. She told herself it was practical. Fewer people, more available machines. She didn't admit, even to herself, that she was hoping to see him again. Tuesday, 11 p.m. Bayek was there, same corner, same methodical folding. Thursday, 4 a.m. He arrived 15 minutes after her, nodded once in greeting, said nothing. Saturday, 2:30 a.m. They were the only ones there except Mrs. Kim, who dozed behind the counter with a Korean drama playing softly on her phone. Leona loaded her clothes, the catering uniform that smelled like grease and desperation, the black event staff polo with someone else's name tag still pinned to it because she'd been too tired to remove it. Beck approached with 2 paper cups from the convenience store next door, set one beside her without asking. "Coffee," he said. "Mrs. Kim's is terrible." Leona picked up the cup, still warm. "Thank you." They sat in silence while the machines ran. Not awkward silence, the kind where words would have been intrusive. After 10 minutes, Leona spoke. "Do you ever get tired of it? The routine? The same thing every day just to survive?" "Every day," Beck said immediately. "But you keep going. What else is there?" He took a sip of his coffee. I tried stopping once, after my grandmother died. I thought, why? What's the point of all this if it just ends anyway? Leona's breath caught. She recognized that thought, had whispered it to herself in the dark at 4 a.m., when her body ached and her brain wouldn't shut off, and tomorrow loomed like a threat. What changed? She asked quietly. Nothing. Everything. He stared at the spinning machines. I woke up one day and realized I was still breathing, so I got up, went to work, came here to wash my clothes. He glanced at her, and I kept doing it until it didn't feel like drowning anymore, just swimming. Does it get easier? No. You just get stronger. Leona wanted to believe him, wanted to think that this weight she carried might someday feel lighter, or that her arms might grow sturdy enough to bear it without breaking. I'm 3 months behind on rent, she said suddenly. The confession tore out of her like a splinter working its way to the surface. My landlord stopped calling. Now he just texts. Numbers. How much I owe. Like I could forget. Bake didn't flinch. Have you looked into housing assistance? I'm on a work visa. International student permit that lets me work limited hours, except I work more than that because I have to, which means I can't report anything officially or I risk deportation. She laughed bitterly. So I smile and lie and hope I make enough before someone notices. That's illegal? Terrifying? Stupid? Leona's voice cracked. I know, but going home means admitting my mother was right, that I couldn't make it, that I'm not strong enough. Strength isn't suffering alone, Beck said quietly. It's knowing when to ask for help. And who do I ask? Everyone I know here is struggling too. She gestured around the empty laundromat. This is my social life. Machines and strangers and... She stopped, looked at him. I'm sorry. You didn't ask for my life story. I offered you coffee, close enough to asking. His expression softened. Barely, but enough. And you're not a stranger anymore. You're Leona. The woman who smiles too much and works too hard and pretends she's fine when she's not. How do you know my name? He pointed to the catering uniform draped over her bag, name embroidered over the pocket. Oh. She felt heat creep up her neck. And you're... Beck Sunwoo. Sunwoo, she repeated. The name felt careful in her mouth, something worth holding on to. The machines beeped in unison, both loads done. As they transferred clothes to dryers, their hands brushed. Brief. Accidental. Electric. Leona pulled back, heart suddenly loud in her ears. Beck fed coins into his dryer, face impassive. But his ears had gone slightly red. The certificate exam loomed 3 weeks away, and Leona's brain felt like static. She'd purchased the study guide 2 months ago, expense she couldn't afford but couldn't avoid, and had managed to read exactly 43 pages. She brought it to the laundromat on Monday, determined to use the dryer cycle productively. Beck arrived at his usual time, noticed the textbook, said nothing. Leona made it through half a page before her eyes started crossing. The words blurred together. Organizational hierarchy, administrative protocols, resource allocation. Might as well have been ancient Greek. She must have dozed off because suddenly the dryer was beeping and her book had slipped from her lap. Beck picked it up, handed it back. Administrative management? Certificate program. If I pass, I can apply for actual office jobs. Better pay, normal hours, maybe even benefits. She rubbed her eyes. If I pass. You sound uncertain. I'm exhausted. I can't retain anything. Every time I study, I just see all the bills I'm not paying while I sit here reading about efficiency optimization. She laughed hollowly. Ironic, right? Beck sat down across from her. What's the hardest part? All of it? I don't know. The organizational theory section makes no sense. And the practice scenarios. She flipped to a dog-eared page. Like this. You have 3 team members and 4 urgent projects. How do you delegate? And I just think, fire everyone. Do it yourself. Don't sleep for a week. That's not efficient. It's realistic. It's how you burn out. Baek held out his hand. Can I see? She hesitated, then passed him the book. He scanned the practice question, brow furrowed in concentration. Team member A has strongest admin skills. Assign Project 1, highest priority documentation. Team member B has client relations experience. Project 2, stakeholder communications. Team member C is detail-oriented. Project 3, data analysis. He looked up. Project 4 gets timeline extension or partial outsourcing because you can't manufacture hours that don't exist. Leona blinked. How did you? I manage warehouse logistics. It's the same concept. Limited resources, multiple demands, everything urgent. He handed the book back. You know this already. You live it every day. You're just using different words. Something clicked in her mind. The questions weren't abstract theories. They were her life, dressed in professional language. Oh my God, she whispered. I'm an idiot. You're tired. Different thing. She looked at him. Really looked. The quiet observation, the practical wisdom, the way he saw solutions instead of obstacles. Sunwoo, would you help me study? I can't pay you, but I could. I don't want payment. I want you to pass. He checked his watch. I have 2 hours before my shift. Show me what you don't understand. They worked until 4 a.m., Beck translating administrative jargon into warehouse logic, Leona's brain finally, blessedly, retaining information. When they left together, first time walking out in sync, Mrs. Kim watched from behind the counter, small smile hidden behind her coffee mug. The studying became routine. 3 nights a week, laundromat corner, Beck explaining concepts with the patience of someone who understood what it meant to learn while drowning in exhaustion. Leona started bringing snacks. Nothing expensive, just kimbap from the discount rack at the convenience store, split between them. Beck never mentioned that he always left the larger portion for her. She never mentioned that she noticed. You're good at this, she said one night, watching him diagram an organizational flowchart on scrap paper. Teaching, I mean. You should have been a professor. Needed a university degree for that. Didn't have the money. So you went straight to work? Joined the military at 19. Mandatory service. Got out, took care of my grandmother, then. He shrugged. The warehouse was hiring. I took the job, stayed. Do you like it? I don't hate it. That's enough. Leona understood that answer more than she wanted to admit. What about you? Beck asked. Why Seoul? Why not stay in... He paused. Where are you from? Chicago, born and raised. She twisted her pencil between her fingers. I came here for university. English literature program with a Korean language minor. Thought I'd teach someday, maybe translate something that mattered. She laughed. Instead, I'm serving canapes to people who don't see me and studying for a certificate and filing paperwork. That matters too. Jobs that keep you alive matter. Do they? Or am I just surviving? The question came out sharper than intended. When does survival become living? Beck was quiet for a long moment. When you stop measuring your worth by productivity. When you exist for more than just making it to tomorrow. Have you figured that out yet? No. But I'm closer than I was 5 years ago. He looked at her directly. And closer than I was 3 weeks ago. The air between them shifted. Subtle, undeniable. Leona's heart did something complicated. Sunwoo, your dryer's done. The moment broke. She stood, collected her clothes, acutely aware of the heat creeping up her neck. As she folded, Beck stayed seated, pretending to review her study notes. But his hands were too still, his focus too intense on material he'd already mastered. Mrs. Kim called from the counter. Closing in 10 minutes. They'd never stayed until closing before. Leona gathered her things, suddenly reluctant to leave. Same time Thursday? I have a double shift. Won't be free until Saturday. Oh, okay. Disappointment tasted bitter. Saturday, then. She was halfway to the door when Bayek spoke again. Leona. She turned. You're not just surviving, not anymore. His expression was serious, certain. You're learning, growing, that's living. She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the ways she was still drowning. Instead, she smiled. Small, genuine, the first real smile in weeks. Thank you. Outside, the pre-dawn air bit cold against her skin, but something warm had taken root in her chest, unfamiliar and terrifying and precious. Saturday came with brutal clarity. Leona's event staffing company sent a mass text canceling all shifts for the following week. Budget cuts, no advance notice, no compensation. She stared at her phone screen, calculating losses. That was 180,000 won she'd been counting on. Rent was already impossible. Now groceries joined the list of unaffordable luxuries. She considered not going to the laundromat. Considered hiding until she'd figured out how to reconstruct her crumbling financial reality. But she'd told Sunwoo she'd be there. And somehow, the thought of disappointing him hurt worse than the eviction notice that would inevitably come. She arrived at 11 p.m. with one small bag, only the essentials. Because laundry cost money she no longer had to spare. Beck was already there. He looked up, started to smile, then stopped. What happened? Nothing. I'm fine. The automatic response. The program deflection. Leona. Just her name. But the way he said it, steady, patient, refusing to accept the lie, broke something in her. I lost my event job. Well, not lost. They just stopped scheduling anyone. So now I have 3 jobs instead of 4, and 3 isn't enough, and I don't know what I'm going to do. The words tumbled out. I have 31,001 in my account, and I owe 4,200,000 in back rent, and my landlord is talking about eviction proceedings, and I can't. Her breath caught. The panic she'd been suppressing for months surged up, tightening her chest. Beck stood, crossed the distance between them. Breathe. Just breathe. I am breathing. No, you're panicking. There's a difference. He didn't touch her, but his presence was grounding. In through your nose. Count to 4. Hold. Out through your mouth. Count to 6. She followed his instructions, hating how her hands shook, hating the weakness, hating... Stop, Beck said quietly. Stop judging yourself for being human. Leona's eyes burned. She focused on breathing. 4 in. Hold. 6 out. Gradually, the vice around her lungs loosened. Better? He asked. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Sit. She sat. He disappeared toward the counter, returned with Mrs. Kim's emergency instant coffee and a questionable protein bar. Eat. When did you last have a meal? Lunch, yesterday. She took the bar, bit into it. Stale, but calories were calories. Beck settled across from her. Okay, let's think practically. You can't pay the full rent amount? Not even a quarter of it. Have you talked to your landlord? Explained the situation, asked for a payment plan? He's not the understanding type. He owns the building, rents to foreign workers because he can charge more, and we have fewer legal protections. She swallowed another bite. Talking just speeds up eviction. Then you need a new place. I can't afford deposits, and most places won't rent to someone on a student visa working illegally. Beck frowned, thinking, what about a goshuan? The small studio rooms, lower deposits, fewer questions. I looked. Even those are too expensive up front. Shared housing? Roommate situation? Same problem. First month, last month, deposit. I don't have any of it. Leona pressed her palms against her eyes. I'm trapped. If I quit school and go home, I've wasted 2 years and proven everyone right. If I stay, I end up homeless. Either way, I lose. There's always a third option. What? Marry rich? Win the lottery? Ask for help. He said it simply, like it wasn't the hardest thing in the world. Leona laughed bitterly. From who? You? You work 10-hour warehouse shifts. Mrs. Kim? She's barely making rent on this place. My family? She shook her head. My mom sends every spare dollar to my grandmother in Jamaica. I can't ask her for more than she's already sacrificed. There are organizations, immigrant support networks, emergency assistance, which require documentation I don't have because I'm working illegally, remember? She stood, sudden restless energy demanding movement. There's no solution, Sunwoo. I'm fucked. That's it. That's the reality. Then stay anyway. She spun to face him. What? Stay. Fight. Refuse to give up. He stood too, matching her intensity. You think I don't know impossible? I spent 2 years watching my grandmother forget my name. Forget how to eat, how to speak, how to be human. Every day I wanted to quit. Every single day. His voice roughened. But I stayed. Because surrendering felt like betraying her. Like saying her life wasn't worth the fight. Leona's throat closed. This is your life, Leona. Your dreams, your future. Don't surrender because it's hard. Surrender when it's not worth fighting for. And you... He stepped closer. You're worth fighting for. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning beyond practicality. Leona couldn't speak, could barely breathe. I don't have much, Beat continued quietly. But I have a couch. It's not comfortable, but it's free. You can stay until you figure things out. I can't ask you to... You didn't ask. I'm offering. His eyes held hers. You don't have to do this alone anymore. And there it was. The thing she'd been terrified of since the moment he'd said, you don't need to smile here. Someone seeing her. Really seeing her. And not turning away. Leona didn't take Bayek's couch. Couldn't let herself cross that line from laundromat acquaintances to whatever living together would mean. But she stopped pretending quite so hard. She showed up Tuesday with visible exhaustion instead of concealed. Admitted when she was hungry instead of declining food. Let silence exist without filling it with false cheerfulness. And Beck, in turn, started sharing small pieces of his own carefully guarded existence. I almost didn't make it to the warehouse today, he said one night, folding a shirt with unusual intensity. Why not? 5-year anniversary of my grandmother's death. He smoothed a wrinkle that didn't exist. Some years it's just a date. Other years it's heavy. Leona finished softly. Yeah. She wanted to say something comforting, but platitudes felt wrong. So instead, what was she like? Before the Alzheimer's? Bake's hand stilled. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, strong. She raised me alone after my parents died in a car accident when I was 7. Never complained, never showed weakness. He smiled slightly. She would have hated what she became. The forgetting, the dependence. She always said she'd rather die proud than live pitiful. But you stayed. I stayed. He resumed folding. And I watched her become everything she feared. And I hated myself for resenting her, for wanting it to end, for feeling relieved when it finally did. Leona's heart ached. That's not wrong. That's human. Doesn't feel human. Feels monstrous. You stayed, she repeated firmly. When you could have walked away, placed her in a facility, protected yourself, you stayed. That's not monstrous. That's love. Beck looked at her then, really looked, and something raw passed between them. You see me, he said quietly. The way I see you. Yes. The machines hummed. Mrs. Kim dozed, the world spun on. And in that unremarkable laundromat, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, 2 people found the rarest thing. Mutual recognition. I brought you something, Beck said, breaking the moment before it became too much. He pulled a small paper bag from his backpack. Nothing big. Leona opened it. Inside, a set of highlighters and sticky notes, the good kind that didn't lose adhesive after one use. For studying, he explained, I noticed your textbook margins are full. Figured you could use more space for notes. Such a small thing. Practical. Unglamorous. But Leona felt tears prick her eyes because he'd noticed. He'd seen her scribbled reminders and overdue bills hidden between study notes, and instead of judgment, he'd offered help. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for telling me about your grandmother." They studied until dawn, passing the textbook back and forth, her highlighting and his explaining, building something steady in the ruins of what they'd each survived alone. 2 weeks before the exam, Leona's tutoring platform suspended her account. Technical violation. Too many sessions from a single IP address, flagged as suspicious activity. She tried to appeal. Automated response. No human contact. Account under review for 30 days. Another income stream gone. She told Jasmine over text. Platform glitch. Should be fixed soon. Told her mother's voicemail. Everything's great. Super busy. Love you. Told Sunwoo. I don't know how much more I can take. They were sitting outside the laundromat, 3 a.m., machines running inside. The convenience store parking lot was empty, except for a delivery truck unloading supplies. Beck handed her his jacket when she shivered. You're taking the exam in 2 weeks regardless, right? What's the point? Even if I pass, I can't afford to wait for job applications to process. I need money now. So pass the exam. Then figure out money. That's not how it works. That's exactly how it works. He turned to face her. You can't control the platform, the landlord, the visa office, but you can control whether you take that test, whether you give yourself the chance. And if I fail, then you fail, but at least you tried. His voice gentled. Leona, you're going to have problems whether you take this exam or not. Might as well have a certificate while you're dealing with them. She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons it was pointless. Instead, she leaned against his shoulder, tentative, testing. He stiffened briefly, then relaxed, letting her stay. They sat like that until the machines beeped completion. 2 exhausted people holding each other up in the only way they knew how. The landlord's final notice came on paper, slid under Leona's door. Vacate within 7 days or face legal eviction proceedings. She read it 3 times, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something survivable. They didn't. She had 31,001, a week of catering shifts, a certificate exam in 9 days, and nowhere to go. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, Leona considered calling her mother. Actually calling, not just leaving cheerful voicemails, admitting defeat, asking to come home. Her finger hovered over the contact. She couldn't do it. Couldn't hear the resignation in her mother's voice, the I knew this would happen. The pity masked as concern. So instead she went to the laundromat. No laundry to wash, couldn't afford the coins, but nowhere else to exist without spending money she didn't have. Mrs. Kim looked up when she entered. No bag today? Just needed. Leona's voice cracked. Is it okay if I just sit? Always okay. Mrs. Kim gestured to the bench. Coffee? I can't pay. I didn't ask if you could pay. I asked if you want coffee. Leona's eyes burned. Yes, please. Thank you. She sat in the corner, Mrs. Kim's terrible, beautiful coffee warming her hands, and tried very hard not to completely fall apart. Bayek arrived 20 minutes later, took one look at her face and sat down beside her. Eviction notice, Leona said before he could ask. When? 7 days. He nodded slowly. Okay, we'll figure it out. There's nothing to figure out. I'm out of options. The couch offer still stands. Sunwoo, I can't. Why not? He turned to face her fully. Give me one reason that isn't pride. Because I barely know you. Because it's too much to ask. Because what if... She stopped. What if what? What if you realize I'm not worth the trouble? What if I become a burden like your grandmother? What if I fall for you and you don't catch me? What if I can't leave? She whispered instead. What if I get comfortable and stop fighting? Then I'll push you, the way you push me. His voice was certain, solid. Leona, you're not a burden. You're a person in crisis who needs help. Let me help." The coffee cup shook in her hands. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of needing you. Of depending on someone and having them leave." Beck's expression softened. "I'm not going anywhere. I come to this laundromat 3 times a week whether I have laundry or not. You think I'm going to stop if you're on my couch instead?" Despite everything, Leona laughed. Wet, broken, but real. "Is that a yes?" he asked. She looked at him. This quiet, careful man who'd seen her at her worst and stayed, who offered practical help instead of empty sympathy, who understood that survival wasn't weakness, it was war. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, okay. Thank you." Relief crossed his face, brief but unmistakable. Mrs. Kim appeared with a second coffee. Set it in front of Bayek without comment, but her small smile said everything. Moving took 30 minutes. Leona owned almost nothing worth keeping: clothes, toiletries, textbooks, and a single framed photo of her grandmother that she kept wrapped in a scarf. Bake's apartment was a 4th-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better decades. The unit itself: 1 room with a kitchen nook, a bathroom smaller than a closet, and a couch that doubled as bed when he pulled it out. "It's not much," he said, suddenly self-conscious. "It's perfect," Leona said honestly. "Because it was warm. Because it was safe. Because no one here would slide eviction notices under the door. You take the couch. I'll sleep on the floor." "Absolutely not. This is your place." "Which means I decide. You're taking the couch." His tone left no room for argument. They established routines quickly. Leona studied while Beck worked. He left coffee ready in the morning. She made simple dinners with whatever discount groceries they could afford. They split the laundromat visits, doing laundry together like it was the most natural thing in the world. And slowly, carefully, they learned each other's rhythms. Leona discovered that Bayek was silent in the mornings, functional but non-verbal until his second coffee. That he organized the kitchen with military precision. That he slept poorly, often waking at 3 a.m. to sit by the window until dawn. Bayek learned that Leona studied better with background noise, that she stress-cleaned when anxious, that she called her mother every Sunday, but never answered when her mother called back. "Why don't you just talk to her?" he asked one evening, watching Leona decline another incoming call. "Because she'll ask how I'm doing, and I'll lie, and she'll know I'm lying. And then we'll both pretend we don't know, and it's exhausting." Leona tossed her phone aside. "It's easier to control the narrative through voicemail." "Is it? Or is it lonelier?" The question landed hard. "Both," Leona admitted quietly. Beck nodded, understanding in a way only someone equally isolated could. That night, Leona finally answered her mother's call. "Baby? Is everything okay?" Concern flooded the line immediately. Leona's throat closed. "I'm struggling, Mom." Silence. Then, "Tell me." So she did. The jobs, the rent, the eviction, the friend who'd taken her in. She left out the illegal work hours and visa concerns, but the rest poured out. Her mother listened, didn't interrupt, didn't say, "I told you so." When Leona finished, her mother's voice was gentle. "You should have told me sooner. I didn't want you to worry. You have enough. You're my daughter. You're always my priority." A pause. "I can't send much. Maybe $200 this month. It's not enough to fix everything, but..." "Mom, no. You need that for Grandma. Your grandmother would want me to help you. We'll manage." Firmness beneath the softness. "You're not alone, Leona. You never were. You just stopped letting people in." After they hung up, Leona sat staring at her phone, something shifting in her chest. Beck emerged from the bathroom, hair damp from a shower. "How'd it go?" "She's sending money, and she didn't judge me." "Why would she judge you for surviving?" "Because I'm not doing it gracefully. I'm barely doing it at all." He sat beside her on the couch. "You're doing it. That's what matters." Leona looked at him. This man who'd offered shelter without hesitation, who saw strength in struggle, who made her believe she was worth the effort. Sunwoo? Yeah? I think I'm falling for you. The words escaped before she could trap them. Vulnerable. Terrifying. True. Beck went very still. You don't have to say anything, Leona added quickly. I needed you to know. Because you've been honest with me, and I owe you the same, and I'm already there. She stopped mid-sentence. What? Falling for you. I'm already there. He met her eyes, expression open in a way she'd never seen. Have been since you tried to smile through a breakdown at a broken washing machine. Leona's heart did something acrobatic. Oh, she whispered. Oh, he echoed, the corner of his mouth quirking up. They sat in the charged silence, the world narrowing to the space between them. I should study, Leona said, not moving. You should, Beck agreed, also not moving. Neither of them moved. And then, slowly, carefully, Beck reached for her hand, laced their fingers together like threading something precious through something equally fragile. Leona squeezed back, grounding herself in his warmth, his solidity, his there-ness. Okay, she breathed. Okay. They sat like that until sleep claimed them, still holding on. The exam was in 3 days. Leona's brain felt stuffed with information and entirely empty simultaneously. She practiced scenarios while Beck made dinner, instant ramyeon with eggs and vegetables, the broke person's feast. Question 17, she called out. A client complains about delayed service. How do you respond while maintaining professional standards? Acknowledge their frustration, apologize for the inconvenience, explain the cause if appropriate, offer a concrete solution with timeline. He stirred the pot. Like I do when warehouse shipments are late. You're better at this than I am. You're anxious. Different thing. She flipped through her notes, anxiety climbing. What if I freeze? What if I forget everything? What if... Leona. Beck appeared in front of her, wooden spoon still in hand. Breathe. I'm breathing. No, you're spiraling. Breathe. She followed his familiar cadence. 4 in, hold, 6 out. Better? Marginally. He smiled, small but real. You're going to pass. You can't know that. I know you. You don't quit. Even when you should, you don't. He tucked a stray curl behind her ear, gesture achingly gentle. That stubbornness will carry you through. Leona leaned into his touch. What if it doesn't? Then you take it again, and again, until it does. That costs money. So we figure it out, together. He cupped her face, making her look at him. You're not alone anymore. Stop acting like you are. The words hit her chest like a physical thing. She'd spent so long being self-sufficient, proving she didn't need anyone, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of we instead of just I. I don't know how to do this, she admitted quietly. The depending on someone thing. Neither do I. We'll learn together. And then he kissed her. Soft, tentative, a question more than a statement. Leona answered by pulling him closer, fingers tangling in his shirt, months of careful distance collapsing into desperate proximity. They broke apart, breathing hard. The ramyeon is burning, Leona whispered. I don't care. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she let herself fall into it, into him, trusting that he'd catch her the way he'd been catching her all along. The smoke alarm went off. They pulled apart, laughing, and Beck lunged for the stove while Leona waved a dish towel under the detector. Dinner was ruined. Neither of them cared. They ate convenience store kimbap on the couch, shoulders pressed together, sharing food and space, and something infinitely more precious. Hope. If you've been rooting for Leona and Sunwoo, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Real love isn't about grand gestures, it's about showing up, and we're just getting started. Exam day arrived cold and bright. Leona woke at 5 a.m., stomach churning. Bayek was already up, coffee ready, her favorite cheap pastry from the convenience store on the counter. You didn't have to eat. You need calories for brain function. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, reviewing mental notes that suddenly felt inadequate. What if I fail? She asked for the 100th time. Then you tried. That's already more than most people do. Beck handed her the coffee. And you won't fail. But if you do, I'll be here when you get back. That doesn't change. The reassurance steadied her. The testing center was across the city. 40-minute subway ride, then a 10-minute walk. Beck insisted on accompanying her despite his early shift. I can get there alone. I know. I want to come anyway. They rode in comfortable silence, Leona's hand gripped tight in his. At the testing center entrance, he stopped. You've got this. What if? No what ifs. You're prepared. You're capable. You're enough. He squeezed her hand. Go prove it to yourself. She kissed him quickly, fiercely. Thank you. I'll be at the laundromat tonight. Usual time. The exam was 3 hours of scenarios, theories, and applications that blurred together. Leona's hand cramped. Her head pounded. But she pushed through, channeling every late night, every study session, every moment Beck had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. When she finally submitted the test, her hands were shaking. Pass or fail, she'd shown up. She'd tried. That had to count for something. She texted Bayek. Done. Going to walk for a bit. His response came immediately. Proud of you. Leona wandered the unfamiliar neighborhood, processing. The weight of uncertainty still pressed down. She wouldn't get results for 2 weeks. But beneath the anxiety, something else. Satisfaction. She'd done the thing she'd been terrified to attempt. Her phone buzzed. Jasmine. How'd the exam go? Leona stared at the message. She could lie. Could say great, so confident, and maintain the performance. Instead, she typed, honestly, no idea. It was hard. I'm scared I failed, but I tried my best, and that's all I could do. Jasmine's response. Proud of you for taking it. Whatever happens, you're braver than I am. Something warm bloomed in Leona's chest. Honesty, met with support instead of judgment. She was learning. Leona returned to the apartment exhausted. Beck was already there, having left work early. How do you feel? He asked. Wrung out, terrified, relieved it's over. She collapsed on the couch. Also starving. I made jjigae. Nothing fancy, but it's hot. She could have cried. You're perfect. I'm practical. Different thing. They ate together, Leona recounting the exam questions, Bayek listening with the focus he brought to everything involving her. There was this one scenario about conflict resolution in a hierarchical workplace, she said between bites. And I just thought about how you handle difficult customers at the warehouse. That thing you said about acknowledging emotions before presenting solutions. Did it work? I think so. I hope so. She set down her spoon, anxiety creeping back. 2 weeks feels like forever. Then we don't think about it for 2 weeks. Beck reached across the table, covered her hand with his. We just exist. No pressure. No what-ifs. I don't know how to do that. We'll figure it out. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, gentle and grounding. Together. That word again. Together. It still felt foreign in her mouth, but she was learning to taste it without fear. After dinner, they ended up at the laundromat. Not because either had laundry, but because it had become their place. The neutral ground where everything had started. Mrs. Kim looked up when they entered, holding hands. Her smile was knowing, pleased. No bags tonight? She asked. Just visiting, Beck said. Ah, then coffee is free. She poured 2 cups without waiting for response, the terrible, beautiful brew that meant safety. They sat in their usual corner, shoulders pressed together, watching the machines spin, even though none of them were running their loads. "I was thinking," Leona said quietly. "After results come back, whatever happens, I want to stay in Seoul." Beck turned to look at her. "Even if you don't pass? Even then. I'll retake it. Find more work. Figure it out." She met his eyes. "Because you're here. And Mrs. Kim. And this weird little laundromat that somehow became home." Her voice softened. "I'm not running anymore." Something fierce and tender crossed Beck's expression. "Good. Because I wasn't letting you go anyway." He kissed her there, in front of the industrial washers and flickering fluorescent lights, in front of Mrs. Kim, who pretended not to watch while absolutely watching. And Leona kissed him back, tasting coffee and commitment, and the promise of tomorrows they'd face together. The waiting period settled into rhythm. Leona picked up extra catering shifts. Baek continued his warehouse hours. Her mother's $200 arrived, which Leona split between essentials and saving toward a deposit for her own place, eventually. Because living with Beck felt temporary and permanent simultaneously. They hadn't discussed long-term, hadn't labeled what they were beyond two people who saw each other clearly. But routines developed. Morning. Beck made coffee. Leona made toast. They ate in comfortable silence before he left for his shift. Afternoon. Leona studied potential job applications, practicing interview answers, preparing for multiple futures. Evening. They cooked together, simple meals stretched to feed two on minimal budget, ramyeon elevated with vegetables, rice with whatever protein was discounted, kimbap assembled from convenience store ingredients. Night. The laundromat. Always the laundromat. Even when they had no laundry, they went, drawn by habit and comfort and Mrs. Kim's knowing presence. "You two are good for business," Mrs. Kim joked one evening. "Other customers see young couple in love, think laundry is romantic." Leona flushed. We haven't really." "You hold hands. You look at each other like world stops. You share food." Mrs. Kim waved dismissively. "Is love. Don't complicate." Beck's ears went red, but he didn't deny it. Later, walking back to the apartment, Leona asked, "Are we in love?" He considered the question with his usual seriousness. "I don't have much to compare it to. I've never felt this way before." He glanced at her. "But if love means wanting someone's happiness more than your own convenience, wanting to share burdens instead of carrying them alone, then yes, I think we are." Leona's heart did that complicated thing again. "I think we are too." They didn't say, "I love you" yet. The words felt too big, too formal for what they'd built in margins and silences. But the feeling existed regardless, growing in the spaces between laundry cycles and shared meals. A week passed, then 10 days. Jasmine texted, "Drinks this weekend? You've been MIA." Leona hesitated, then invited her to the apartment. Let her into this new reality, instead of maintaining the performance. Jasmine arrived with cheap soju and wide eyes. "This is where you've been staying?" "My friend's place. I told you I had housing issues." Leona poured drinks. "It's temporary." "Your friend?" Jasmine's grin was knowing when Beck emerged from the bathroom. "Hi, I'm Jasmine. The friend who only got the sanitized version of Leona's life until recently." Beck shook her hand. "Sunwoo, the friend providing the couch." "The couch you're definitely not sharing," Jasmine said innocently. Leona threw a cushion at her. They drank soju and ate convenience store snacks, Jasmine regaling them with stories from disastrous catering events, Leona finally, laughing without performing. "You seem different," Jasmine observed later, when Beck stepped out for a phone call. "Lighter. More real." "I stopped pretending everything was fine when it wasn't," Leona admitted. "Turns out honesty is less exhausting than lies." "Revolutionary concept." Jasmine squeezed her hand. "I'm glad you found someone who lets you be human." After Jasmine left, Leona curled against Bayek on the couch. Thank you for being patient with my mess of a life. It's our mess now, he corrected quietly. And it's getting less messy. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that the exam results would be positive, that a job would materialize, that the constant financial terror would ease. But even if none of that happened, she had this, his steady presence, Mrs. A. Kim's coffee, a laundromat that felt like sanctuary. That had to be enough. And somehow, miraculously, it was. Day 12. An email arrived. Subject line, certificate examination results. Leona stared at her phone, unable to open it. Beck was at work. She was alone in the apartment, frozen between hope and terror. Her hands shook as she tapped the notification. Dear Ms. Reed, congratulations. You have successfully passed the Administrative Management Certificate examination with a score of 87 to 100. She read it 3 times, then a 4th. Passed. She'd passed. The tears came sudden and overwhelming. Relief, joy, disbelief all tangled together. She'd done it. Despite everything, despite the exhaustion and fear and impossible odds, she'd done it. She called Beck immediately. Leona, what's wrong? His voice carried instant concern. I passed. The words came out choked. I passed the exam. Silence. Then, I knew you would. You couldn't have known. I knew. Absolute certainty. Because you're brilliant and stubborn and you don't quit. I'm so proud of you. She wiped her eyes, grinning through tears. I need to update my resume. Apply for jobs. I can do this. I can actually do this. You've always been doing this. Now you just have proof. After they hung up, Leona called her mother. Baby, I've been waiting to hear. I passed, Mom. I actually passed. Her mother's sob echoed through the line. I never doubted you, not for 1 second. I doubted me. I know, but you did it anyway. That's courage, Leona. Real courage. Pride saturated every word. What happens now? I apply for office positions. Real jobs with benefits and normal hours. Leona took a shaky breath. I start building the life I came here for. That afternoon, she updated her resume, certificate proudly listed. Searched job boards for administrative positions. Applied to 15 different companies, crafting individual cover letters, pouring hope into each submission. By the time Beck came home, she was exhausted but electric with possibility. How does it feel? He asked, pulling her into his arms. Terrifying. Exciting. Real. She buried her face in his shoulder. Thank you for making me believe I could. You did the work. I just reminded you that you were capable. That's everything, though. The reminding. She pulled back to look at him. You gave me back to myself. The version that doesn't have to smile through everything. His expression softened in that way unique to her. You gave me back to myself, too. The version that can connect without breaking. They kissed there in the tiny kitchen, celebrating not just the certificate, but the journey that had led to it. The broken washing machine, the terrible coffee, the night the mask finally fell. 3 days later, Leona got a call. Interview request for an administrative coordinator position at a mid-size import-export company. Then another, and another. Within a week, she had 4 interviews scheduled. What if they ask about my visa status? She worried aloud. About the gap in my employment history? Tell the truth. You were studying while working part-time. That's not a gap. That's dedication. Beck helped her practice answers, playing interviewer with the same patient focus he brought to everything. The first interview went poorly. Leona was too nervous, talked too fast, couldn't find her rhythm. The second was better. She remembered Bayek's advice. Acknowledge the question, provide concrete examples, speak to skills rather than apologies. The third felt right. The interviewer was a woman in her 40s who'd immigrated from the Philippines, who understood what it meant to build a life from scratch in a foreign country. Your certificate is recent, she noted. I finished it while working multiple jobs to support myself, Leona said honestly. It wasn't easy, but I don't quit things that matter. The interviewer smiled. When can you start? The job was real. Contract position, 6 months with potential for permanent hire. 40 hours per week. Actual benefits. Salary that would cover rent, food, savings. Leona cried when she signed the contract. Start date is in 2 weeks, she told Bayek that night. I need to give notice at my catering job. Wrap up the online tutoring once my account is reinstated. And? He prompted gently. Find my own place. She said it quickly, before she could lose courage. You've been so generous, but I can't stay on your couch forever. Something flickered across Bayek's face. You're not on the couch anymore. True. They'd been sharing his bed for the past week, gravitating together in sleep like magnets finding true north. Still, this was always temporary. She forced brightness into her voice. I need to stand on my own feet again, prove I can do this independently. You've already proved that. His voice was measured, careful. But if you need space, I understand. Did she need space? Or was she running again? This time from intimacy instead of failure. I don't want to presume, she said quietly. We never discussed what we are. Long term. What do you want us to be? The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Leona took a breath. I want to wake up next to you. I want to split grocery bills and argue about who does dishes. I want the boring, ordinary, everyday things that mean building a life together. Then stay. Simple. Direct. Not as temporary, as permanent, as ours instead of mine. Her heart seized. Sunwoo, I love you. The words came out rough, unpracticed, absolutely certain. I don't have experience with this. I'm not good at romance or grand gestures. But I know I want you here. Always. If you want that too. Leona's eyes burned. I love you too. I have for weeks. I just didn't know how to say it. So say it now. I love you, Baek Sunwoo. The words felt like freedom. And I want to stay. If you're sure. I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and she kissed back with all the emotion she'd been hoarding. The fear and hope and desperate, fragile love. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Beek rested his forehead against hers. We'll need a bigger place eventually, he murmured. Eventually, she agreed. For now, this is perfect. Because perfect wasn't about square footage or financial stability. Perfect was this: being seen, being valued, being loved exactly as she was. The 2 weeks before Leona's job start date passed in a blur of transitions. She gave notice at the catering company. They barely acknowledged her departure. Closed out her remaining tutoring sessions once the platform reinstated her account. Bought professional clothes from secondhand shops, building a work wardrobe on a budget. And every night, she came back to Baek. To their apartment now, not his. To shared meals and comfortable silences and slow explorations of what it meant to love someone who'd seen your worst and stayed. Nervous about tomorrow? Baek asked the night before her first day. Terrified, Leona admitted. They were tangled together on the bed, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. What if I'm not good enough? What if I got the job because they felt sorry for me? You got the job because you're qualified. The certificate proves it. Your experience proves it. He kissed the top of her head. And if it's hard at first, you'll learn. That's what you do. How are you always so certain? Because I know you. And you're extraordinary. You just needed to see it yourself. She tilted her head up to kiss him properly, pouring gratitude and love into the gesture. The first day was overwhelming. New systems to learn, names to remember, protocols to absorb. But Leona's manager, Ms. Santos, the woman who'd interviewed her, was patient, encouraging. willing to explain things twice when needed. "You're doing great," she said at the end of the day. "Most people are lost for the first week. You're already asking smart questions." Leona returned to the apartment exhausted but satisfied. Real, productive exhaustion, not the soul-crushing fatigue of survival work. "How was it?" Beck asked, pulling her into a hug. "Hard. Good. Really good." She breathed in his familiar scent, warehouse dust and laundry soap. "I think I can do this." "I know you can." They celebrated with convenience store sushi and cheap beer, toasting to new beginnings on the couch that had once been Leona's temporary refuge and was now simply part of their home. A week into the job, Leona got her first paycheck. She stared at the number, more money than she'd made in a month of combined part-time work. She immediately transferred rent money to Bayek. He transferred it back. "What are you doing?" she texted during her lunch break. "You don't owe me rent. We're partners." "I need to contribute." "Then contribute to groceries, utilities, whatever. But I'm not taking rent from the person I love. That's not how this works." They argued about it that evening, the first real argument they'd had. "I'm not a charity case," Leona insisted. "I can pay my share." "I never said you couldn't. I'm saying you don't have to prove your worth through money." Beck's voice stayed level but firm. "You've been drowning in financial terror for months. Let yourself breathe. But it's not fair to you." "Leona." He took her hands. "When you were at your worst, you let me help. Let me keep helping. Not because you need it, because I want to. Because we're building something together, and that means sharing everything, good and bad." She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain independence as proof of strength, but his eyes held only love and sincerity. No pity, no judgment. "Okay," she whispered. "But I'm buying groceries from now on." Deal. 3 months into Leona's new job, things had stabilized into something resembling normal life. She excelled at work. Her manager had already mentioned the possibility of early conversion to permanent status. Her mother called weekly, conversations no longer loaded with unspoken worry. Jasmine had become a real friend, not just a work acquaintance. And Bayek was home. They still went to the laundromat 3 times a week, even though their building had machines. It had become ritual, their space, where everything had started. Mrs. Kim greeted them like family now. "The lovebirds, your usual machines?" "Please," Leona said, grinning. They loaded their laundry side by side, movements synchronized through repetition. Bayek always added the detergent. Leona always set the temperature. Small domestic choreography that meant everything. While the machines ran, they sat with Mrs. Kim's coffee, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing together. "I've been thinking," Beck said one evening. "Dangerous," Leona teased. He smiled, but his expression turned serious. "My lease is up in 2 months. I was thinking we could look for a bigger place. Something that's ours from the start, not mine that became ours." Leona's heart jumped. "You want to get a place together? Officially? Is that too fast?" Uncertainty crept into his voice. Rare for him. "No. God, no." She set down her coffee, turned to face him fully. "I want that. I want all of it. The bigger apartment, the joint lease, the boring domesticity." Relief flooded his features. "We should start looking then. Nothing fancy, just ours." "Ours," Leona repeated, loving the sound of it. They found a place 3 weeks later, a small 2-bedroom on the 5th floor of a building near the laundromat. The second room could be Leona's study or Bayek's workout space or just storage. The kitchen was slightly bigger. The bathroom had a tub instead of just a shower. It was perfect. Moving day was chaos. Bake's sparse belongings, Leona's growing collection of professional clothes and textbooks, furniture cobbled together from secondhand shops and sidewalk finds. But when they finally collapsed on their new couch, Purchased together, chosen together, Leona felt something slot into place. "We did it," she said, surveying their home. "You did it," Beck corrected. "Came to a foreign country, survived impossible circumstances, built a career." He pulled her close. "I just provided moral support. You provided everything." She kissed his jaw, his cheek, his mouth. "You saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You stayed. Always," he murmured against her lips. "I'm always staying." They made love there on the new couch, christening their space with whispered promises and shared breath, and the bone-deep certainty that they'd found something rare. 6 months after Leona's first day at the import company, Ms. Santos called her into the office. "We're converting your contract to permanent," she said without preamble. "You've exceeded every expectation. I'd like to offer you a senior coordinator position with a salary increase." Leona had to sit down. Yes, thank you." "Yes." Ms. Santos smiled. "You've worked hard. You deserve this." Walking out of that meeting, Leona felt like she was floating. Permanent position, career trajectory, stability she'd once thought impossible. She called Bayek immediately. "They made it permanent, promoted me. I have a real job, a real career." His whoop of joy made her laugh. "We're celebrating, properly. Dinner somewhere that isn't convenience store food." They went to a small Korean barbecue place, splurging on good meat and soju, toasting to Leona's success and the journey that had led here. "Remember when you thought you'd have to go home?" Beck asked, grilling meat with practiced efficiency. "I try not to," Leona admitted. "That version of me was so scared, so convinced she was failing. She was surviving. There's a difference. I know that now." She reached across the table for his hand. "Thanks to you. Thanks to you," he countered. "I was half alive before I met you. Going through motions, not actually living. And now? Now I'm awake. Present. Happy?" He said it like a revelation. "I didn't think I could be happy again." "Then you walked into a laundromat trying to smile through a breakdown." Leona's eyes stung. "Best broken washing machine ever." "Agreed." They ate and drank and celebrated not just the promotion, but everything. The love built in margins, the trust earned through honesty, the life they'd constructed from ruins. Later, walking home through Seoul streets now familiar instead of foreign, Leona stopped under a streetlight. "What?" Beck asked. "I'm happy," she said wonderingly. "Really, genuinely happy. Not performing, not pretending. Just happy." He pulled her into a kiss that tasted like soju and certainty. "Good," he murmured. "You deserve to be. So do you. I am. With you, I am." A year after that first night at the laundromat, Leona and Bayek returned to the place where everything had started. They didn't need to do laundry. Their building machines worked fine. But some rituals were worth maintaining. Mrs. Kim looked up when they entered, her smile warm and knowing. "The anniversary couple. Is it that obvious?" Leona asked, laughing. "You come here every week for a year. No laundry sometimes, just coffee and sitting." "Yes, obvious." Mrs. Kim poured their usual cups. "You make good love story. Better than my dramas." Beek's ears went red, but he didn't deny it. They sat in their corner, Machine 5 spinning someone else's clothes now, but the bench the same, the lighting the same, the atmosphere of neutral safety unchanged. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if Machine 4 had worked that night?" Leona asked. "Every day," Beck said quietly. "I think about how close we both came to giving up, to just stopping. But we didn't. No, we didn't." He took her hand. Familiar gesture now, but still precious. "We kept showing up, kept trying, and we found each other in the process." Leona leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to think asking for help meant I'd failed, that needing someone made me weak. And now? Now I know strength is letting people see you, trusting them to stay. She lifted her head to look at him. You taught me that. You taught me that connection isn't loss, he countered. That loving someone doesn't mean breaking when they leave, it means growing while they're here. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the machines spin, Mrs. Kim humming behind the counter, the world continuing around them. This place, unglamorous, fluorescent lit, smelling of industrial soap, had saved them both. Not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, but through constancy. Through being a space where masks could fall and humanity could exist without judgment. Thank you, Leona said suddenly. For what? For seeing me. For saying I didn't need to smile. She squeezed his hand. For being the person who stayed. Thank you for letting me, he said softly. For trusting me with your truth. Mrs. Kim appeared with refilled coffee, her expression tender. You two remind me why I keep this place open. For moments like this. She patted Leona's shoulder. Everyone needs somewhere safe to be broken, then safe to be whole. After she walked away, Beck turned to Leona. I love you, he said. Simple. True. I'm going to keep loving you, every day, in this laundromat and everywhere else. I love you too, Leona whispered. Always. They kissed there, in the place where it all began, surrounded by spinning machines and terrible coffee and the quiet certainty that they'd found home, not in a location, but in each other. 2 years later, Leona stood in the same laundromat, watching Bayek load their clothes into Machine 5. Some things had changed. She was now a senior administrative manager at her company, leading a team of 4. Beck had been promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse, finally earning the respect his competence deserved. They'd moved to a slightly bigger apartment, adopted a rescue cat named Coin, because of course, and were saving for an actual vacation. First one either of them would take in years. But some things remained constant. They still came to Mrs. Kim's laundromat every week. Still drank terrible coffee and sat in their corner. Still found sanctuary in the unglamorous space that had witnessed their transformation. You two still here? Mrs. Kim called from the counter, grinning. I'm going to start charging rent. You'd miss us too much, Leona shot back, grinning. True. You're my favorite success story. Mrs. Kim shuffled over with fresh coffee. I tell customers. Couple met here when girl was crying at broken machine. Now they're happy. Love can happen anywhere. Leona glanced at Bayek, who was smiling that small, private smile reserved just for her. It really can, she agreed. Later, walking home through streets now intimately familiar, Leona thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago. Drowning, desperate, convinced that showing weakness meant failure. That woman wouldn't recognize her now. This version who asked for help when she needed it, who built a career through grit and support, who loved openly instead of guardedly. What are you thinking about? Beck asked, threading his fingers through hers. How far we've come. How different everything is. Better different? Infinitely better. She stopped walking, turned to face him under the streetlight. I was so lost when we met. And you were so closed off. We were both just surviving. And now we're living, he finished. Together. Together, she echoed, the word still beautiful after 2 years of daily use. He kissed her, soft, familiar, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Leona smiled. A real smile, light and genuine, with no performance behind it. Let's go home, she said. Yeah, Beck agreed, squeezing her hand. Let's go home. They walked through Seoul streets together. 2 people who'd found each other at their lowest, and built something extraordinary from the ruins. No fairy tale endings, no magical fixes, just the steady, unglamorous work of showing up, of being seen, of choosing each other every single day. The laundromat lights glowed behind them, a beacon for the next person who needed a safe place to break down, who needed someone to say, "You don't need to smile here." Because that's where healing started. Not in pretending to be fine, but in permission to be human. And for Leona and Bayek, that permission had become love. The kind built in margins and silences, in terrible coffee and broken washing machines, in the courage to be vulnerable and the strength to stay. That was their story. That was their truth. And it was enough. It was everything.